Welcome, everybody. My name is Clay Malcolm here at Advanta IRA, and today we have a presentation for you that really talks about an IRA investment strategy, the possibility of a couple of types of real estate investing combined together to perhaps create an end result that would be beneficial for your financial situation, or a way for you to use your IRA effectively. So really delighted to be able to have the fellows from Bohemian Properties today, John Michael Gentry and William Danger Kirk. And John's going to be our presenter today. You know, we actually started this presentation with a discussion about, hey, what do you guys do, and things like that. And this was a while back when we'd first met, and we started to talk about ways that real estate investing strategies can be combined. And I thought that it might make an interesting presentation to talk about and I've heard about the combination of some of these strategies before. I attend a lot of real estate investor groups and things like that, but I mostly hear about it from somebody who is just telling people that these are possibilities. It's not often that I get a chance to talk to somebody who is executing the strategies in combination with one another and working, currently in the space. And so it was nice to be able to get the guys from Bohemian Properties to talk about their experience in this kind of investment combination, and give us a sense of how they're using the combination to work for folks, for investors, and give you guys an insight into that as well. So a little bit of bookkeeping. We are going to answer questions. So if you have questions about the presentation, please feel free to type them in the questions box, and we will answer them at the end of the presentation. I'm going to start at the beginning with a little bit of IRA information, and also talk a little bit about the investment combination that we're going to be speaking about that John's going to be talking about during the presentation. But do type in the questions as they occur to you, and like I say, we'll field them at the end. And any information that you would need to help make this strategy, whether it's just general IRA investing or the specific strategy that we're going to talk about today, anything that you need, any information that you need to make that operational for you, we're really here for you today. It's an educational presentation. We'd like for you to get out of it what you need to in order to, make your investment strategy fly. All right. So I do have to start with the disclaimer, which is basically that all the information today is for education purposes only. At Advanta IRA, we do not give tax, legal, or investment advice. We don't advocate any particular investment strategy, or investment vendor. And we certainly encourage you to talk to your financial and real estate team anytime that you are considering an investment for your IRA. One of the things about Advanta IRA as a provider of these tax advantaged accounts that can invest in real estate is that we're a very neutral part of the equation. So again, we don't give tax, legal, or investment advice. Our job is really to make sure that the account is documented properly so that you get to keep the tax advantages that are associated with the account type that you choose. So we're really here to hear what strategy you want to engage, and to document that strategy and the activity of the account so that you get to keep the tax benefits. That's really our part of the equation. Now, we're always here to talk to you about, how the IRS views the account activity, prohibited transactions, things like that. So we're a part of the equation and part of the education equation as well. So happy to talk to you about anything that you have in mind from an IRA investment strategy standpoint. But our role is really the documentation part. Now, as the provider of the account, what we try to provide for the account holder is obviously the documentation. As I mentioned, we're actually a very experienced company, long tenured employees, and the company takes very seriously the education of its employees, myself included. And so we're really taking time to make sure that we're up to date on the most recent legislation, the rules, how they might affect you, and things about, hey, how can account types interact, how can they invest, so on and so forth, to help flesh out your ideas or accomplish the goals that you're looking for. So we are really working hard to make sure that we can provide you with that kind of educational support that you need. We're a medium-sized company in the space, about $1.3 billion of assets that we do the administration for. Your cash position here at Advanta IRA is FDIC insured, just in case the bank collapses. So you do have that going for you when you have an invested cash. And we are set up such that each investor gets their own two-person team. One is an education person, kind of like myself, so I usually handle onboarding and education and strategy at the beginning. And then also an account manager who is more of a behind-the-scenes person who helps with the investment paperwork and any kind of questions that you have about the mechanics of your account. So that two-person team, you get our phone numbers, you get our emails, so you know who to turn to for information at any point during the life of your account. So we really want to make sure that you have people that are available to you and to be able to help guide you in any questions that you might have about how to utilize your account. All right, now that we're talking about accounts, a lot of people are interested in self-directed IRAs, and I would say more than half of them think that self-directed IRAs are a different animal, or a more different animal than their traditional or Roth at a bank or brokerage house. And the reality is, self-directed IRA, the term self-directed is really just a descriptive term, and it's possible that it causes more trouble than it's actually worth. But the idea is that it gives the account holder the ability to choose the investments that the IRA is going to make. So self-directed meaning that the account holder is going to choose those investments. Now, in the common vocabulary, what it has come to mean is a self-directed IRA has often come to mean one that also allows for alternative or private assets. So not only is the account holder going to be making a choice, but with a company like Advanta, we have chosen to specialize in the documentation of the activity of accounts that invest in alternative assets or private assets or hard assets. Again, the vocabulary can be a little bit changeable, but the idea is that you're combining the tax benefits with the account type, and where you're combining it with the returns that you can create by investing in real estate or other kind of, as I mentioned, private assets and hard assets. So that is, at its core, is really what we're talking about when we're talking about a self-directed IRA. And of course, your self-directed IRA at Advanta can invest in all kinds of alternative assets, pretty much everything that is allowed by law. And today we're going to be focusing on real estate, but there are others as well. As you can see some of those on the screen there. Precious metals, foreign currency, cryptocurrency has been pretty active lately. All these types of assets that are allowed by law, your IRA can invest in those to create returns for your retirement account and your HSA. So speaking of accounts, as I mentioned before, a self-directed account is not a specific account type. It's just it's a descriptive term about the account types, and the account types are the ones that you're familiar with, right? So traditional IRA and Roth, there's SEP IRA and Simple for small businesses, solo 401k or individual K plan as you see it there. So usually SEP IRAs and solo 401ks or individual Ks are used by self-employed folks. Your health savings account is also an individual custodial account, and it can be invested in these types of assets as well. A lot of people, kind of have flex spending accounts in mind and think that an HSA is use it or lose it, or can't invest in alternatives, but that's actually not the case. So health savings accounts are becoming more popular these days as well. And I put former employer plans on there because it's the most common scenario that we have is somebody opens an account with us. They'll do a rollover from an old 401k, 457, 401a, 403b, defined benefit plan. Any of those account types, after you've separated from employment, are able to be rolled over without tax and without penalty to an IRA. And often people are choosing self-directed IRA plans for their investment needs. So the account types stay the same. Contribution rules are the same, distribution rules are the same, and the tax advantages are the same. When we talk about self-directed IRAs that invest in alternatives, the thing that is really different is what it invests in. As I mentioned before, it's a broad range of things, and today we're going to be focusing on real estate. So do understand that even real estate as an asset class is really incredibly multifaceted, right? So it could be single-family rentals, it could be commercial properties of all kinds. Your strategy could be fix and flip or fix and hold. All of the financial documents that are associated with owning real estate are available. So things like trust deeds and tax liens and those types of things, those financial instruments are all available as investment possibilities for your IRA as well. It's certainly very common to see people participate in real estate through a private equity or a joint venture or a partnership or a syndication. All of those are kind of terms for gathering investors and putting them together to execute a deal or deals. And then I also put on there private lending, because today we're going to be talking about adding some private lending characteristics or strategies to the long-term real estate investment. And understand that the IRS will allow your IRA to be a lender, and it can loan for all kinds of things. So it could be a bridge loan, it could be a rehab loan, it could be a mortgage style loan. All of those things are available as assets for your IRA. So you can be the originator, or you can also buy existing notes. So there's a lot of options when it comes to the idea of private lending within your IRA, and we're going to explore one of those today in conjunction with buying properties. And your IRA can use debt, and so debt leverage is a way to extend your buying power, your IRA's buying power, and to get you into deals that you might not be able to get into otherwise. And so understand that that is a possibility for your IRA's investment strategy. One of the things that I think that is really powerful about self-directed IRA investing is that it can seem a little daunting in as much as the account holder is making the decisions of what to buy, when to sell, negotiating the terms and things like that, but you get to use your team. And often it's a team of people that you've already done the vetting on, or your trusted financial advisor, or your trusted real estate team. So you do get to choose who you work with, and that's a really important part of the equation. So as a self-directed IRA investor, don't equate that with, oh, I have to do it all by myself. You get to use all the resources that you would normally use from an investment standpoint. So understand that you can bring those to bear when you're thinking about your IRA's investment. And John is going to talk mostly about the investment strategy today, but do understand that the idea of your IRA investing in those assets that we talked about is a relatively easy one to execute. It really is. You open up an account with us, you fund that account with a rollover, as I mentioned, or a transfer from another IRA. Both of those movements of funds are not taxed and not penalized. You're really just moving them into position so that you can invest in alternatives, and in this case, some real estate assets. And if you qualify, you can also, of course, make contributions to your account. And that one of those three, or a combination of those three things, will get some cash into the account. And then once the account is open and funded, it's ready to invest. So you get to choose the investment and negotiate the deal, and work with your account manager here to work on the paperwork that substantiates that investment. Your IRA money gets dispersed to close the deal, and it also receives all the returns, and it gets that tax deferred status on all the earnings. And in the case of a Roth, that can also be tax-free. So understand, again, we're talking about the combination of the tax benefits of the account with the earnings that can be created by real estate. And I also want to just mention, before I turn it over to John, which I'm going to do here momentarily, is we are also aware that sometimes people need some help finding deals and getting their creative juices flowing when it comes to how to deploy their IRA funds. So we have started an event, which is a live Zoom networking event for investors and investment issuers, and also service providers. It's every other Friday, 12 to 1:30, and it's a live event. You get to come on, tell the group what kind of investments you're looking for, or what kind of investments you have to offer if your IRA is selling something. And so please look on our website. The link is down there. It's called Pitch, Promote, and Prosper. We're happy to have you attend. There's no obligation. It's free. If you can make it, show up. It's a great community. And it's really been quite popular, and we're delighted to be able to provide that forum for IRA investors as well as the investment issuers. And so here's my contact information, and it's going to show up again at the end. But at this point, I'm going to really turn it over to John, and John's going to talk about our featured topic for today. And I'm going to do my screen sharing kind of mechanics here so that we can get his screen up on the air. And John, are you with us there?
Yes, sir, I am.
All right. Well, so for those of you who weren't at the very beginning, do understand that this is John Michael Gentry, founder of Bohemian Properties. And I know that William Danger Kirk is there in the background there. And so Those two fellows are really our knowledge source today, although John's going to be the speaker. And John, I'm going to let you take it away. And remember, everybody, will answer questions at the end. So if you have questions, type them in the question box. Take it away, John.
Fantastic. Thanks for joining us today, everyone. And Clay, thank you and the Advanta team for having us. I'm John Gentry with Bohemian Properties, LLC. And as Clay mentioned, there'll be a time after the presentation to go over any questions you have. So please, as you have those pop into your head, go ahead and type them into the chat box. And at the end here in a little bit, we will go over all those. So today, I'm going to talk about a strategy that we are presently engaged in within our market that has produced some awesome yields. We are in the Birmingham, Alabama market, and we're sourcing houses in low crime pockets and bringing the homes up to a respectable standard and selling them as newly originated notes. We've honed our searches by comparing crime maps and current police blotter activity to find the pockets of properties with lower crime stats over the past few years. Also, over the last decade, Alabama has had more large operations join our job pool. Amazon is building their second fulfillment center in under 2 years in our market, offering more than 6,000 new jobs. The University of Alabama at Birmingham, the largest employer in the state, is based centrally right here in Birmingham, adding over 24,000 jobs alone, covering over 94 city blocks. Regions Financial Services has a regional base here, and they have over 8,000 employees. AT&T also has a regional command center with 6,000 employees. We have several other regional medical centers offering up to another 10,000 jobs. And additionally, with UAB, we also have the only level 1 trauma center within 300 miles. And UAB has just been selected by Forbes as the #1 large employer to work for in 2021. And that came out just 2 weeks ago. Birmingham, Alabama is one of the hottest rental markets in our country. This is predicated on a low acquisition cost and the ability to build out an at-par rental and make a competitive rate of return, usually around 8 to 10%. We use this fact paired with the American dream of being a homeowner, and voila, it's a win-win situation. We are able to originate these notes based on market rents, getting us a larger than average yield through interest and buying at a discount, also having our own contractor pool. Now, with anyone that has run or known someone who has run a flipping or rehabbing business, you know you are only as strong as your team. Also, you probably know that no matter how much you pay a good contractor, at some point they'll be like dust in the wind. Now, I have been fortunate enough to have managed several commercial and residential rehab projects in the past as a project manager for a family-owned home builder in the area. Running these crews and lining up these jobs to run both smoothly and come in at or under budget has earned me strong relationships with architects, master plumbers, builders, general contractors, electricians, and more. Family is huge for us at Bohemian Properties, and our contractor pool is comprised mostly of family-owned businesses. Most have decades worth of experience, and some are even multi-generational tradesmen. When we find the right buyer, we're able to offer them the opportunity to pay a rent rate and less over time as rents grow. So as the market gets more and more costly from a rental standpoint, the mortgage rate is stable and does not go up. Examples in the market would be based on rent increasing annually, which historically has been fairly consistent. In an article from Money Talks News from October 2020, the average rent raise in the US market has risen an average of 32% in the last decade. The buyer of this property will not have to worry about the rise of rents in their market and should have an ever increasing quality of life as the market rates for employment rise over the years. They will one day own the home. So we are chasing yield, not just interest. Having the ability to source the buyers and verify employment, as well as a full background check, that will be very important part of selecting our buyer. We also look at a full credit report. We want to know all the details. Have they been making housing payments, but maybe have too much credit card usage? That could make a person not look great on paper. We want to use it to know their priorities and help train them on the proper usage of their credit. We envision putting a family in a home that they can see themselves living in for the rest of their lives. And that's a beautiful strategy. Working in Alabama gives us the ability to originate these deals for between $75,000 up to $150,000 and offers us an ample amount of options. Our target properties are found through our marketing, our deal sources, and a cultured relational network. All very important things we have. A lot of shaking hands and kissing babies. Now, as we expand our market into other states, we will do so based on market research, as well as market trends. We do our homework and collect all of the data we can find. As William says, there's no such thing as too much data. We will go to where the juice is worth the squeeze and also where the berries don't require a bucket truck to get to. Now, also being in these neighborhoods with lower crime in the suburbs of Birmingham, we have a present that helps us source from neighbors as they're ready to sell. Talk to everybody in the community. Be there and be available. This helps with inventory as well as helps make the neighborhood better. We often install security systems in the homes, as well as presently looking for some solid camera options with facial recognition. The more secure the whole neighborhood, the better for everyone. It's a common practice to go into some of these Birmingham areas that are more run down and take the excess of abundant abandoned properties that were originally well built and pluck these diamonds in the rough and make them great again. We try to mitigate the appearance of low-hanging fruit crime-wise by making it known that you are being either watched or deterred with a security system. Our goal is to not only make solid returns, but to breed safety in these communities so that we may keep buying in these pockets for years to come. To this point, we've had no crime in a property and have not onboarded the smart cameras yet, but when I heard they were being successfully used in higher crime areas, I thought it worth vetting. So if the city's not the place for our dollars, depending on our joint venture partners, we also dive deep into large rural areas with strong employment opportunities that allow us to duplicate our strategy in a country setting. Usually a little more land with a home, also tighter knit communities. Everybody knows their neighbors, so you get to make more friends. Now, with the lower wage requirements compared to other parts of the nation, we have been able to draw a myriad of manufacturing and agricultural processing plants into these surrounding areas. Auto parts manufacturing, automobile manufacturing, agricultural processing for corn, cotton, soybeans, and also peanuts are large cash crops in this region. Chicken and egg processing are also large employers in the state. Also, coal is still a large employer in the area, with the Drummond mines still feeding our steam plants. So these jobs are usually held by solid people with poor financial education. This allows us to find solid earners that are thankful to be able to buy a house after any credit mishaps that may have happened in their lives. We know that if people fall on hard times, we could take the home back, or it could allow us to re-originate terms and get a new down payment. I feel that if we show some possibility that the buyer wins, we will do more business through referrals instead of defaults. So let's talk about what our goals are. We want to originate as many seller finance deals as possible. We have a pretty consistent flow of opportunities and have been able to take down some sweet deals. With that being said, I would like to add that Birmingham is like most other hotspots in the country. There are tons of wholesalers sending overpriced deals, which we vet and open a dialogue to see if we can find a common ground to do business. It's all about communication and perception. We strive to help the wholesalers understand we want them to eat as well, but not so well it kills the deal. A few properties would add a solid amount of cash flow to a self-directed IRA. So we dance this negotiation dance until we get the deal at a good price, or until we have to cut bait. You can't buy them all, and they're not always priced where they need to be. With the right data, there's usually a win to be had. And sometimes that data just says, hey, don't take this one down. You know, you don't lose sleep at night over the one that you didn't do. Now, our primary goal is to stack up as many of these wins as possible and build legacy. So, speaking of self-directed IRAs, let's ask one simple question. Are you doing these deals to mitigate the taxes and allow a greater quality of life later on and for your heirs? If the answer is yes, then we'll see here shortly how one deal can stack up some good returns on our money. We will walk through how we took less than $40,000 and are turning it into over $188,000 with no large tax penalty. So let's go over the last deal we put together with one of our partners out of state, out in California. And the goal was to acquire a 3-2 house and originate a note. So I'm going to break down this deal. So let's see here. We've got 3 beds, 2 baths with a bonus playroom and a den. We were fortunate enough to find this property with a partially remodeled kitchen. So the scope of work was to paint the area and upgrade the plumbing, including the evacuation line to the sewer. Sadly, that needed to be done. Also, we replaced the roof with a new 25-year roof, as well as installed heating and cooling. And we installed a stove and a refrigerator. And after that, we're ready to rock and roll. So here we're looking at some pictures of some of the things that we had to deal with here. And this is our evacuation line. And we can see that that thing was like a sieve, that big crack running down it. That's always fun. And there was also no clean out on the property. So the first thing we did after we were able to uncover the exterior of the pipe from the house was to put a evacuation clean out in. If you got to dig it up, make sure you only have to dig it up one time. We also had some stairs broken that we had to mitigate. So we demoed those out and replaced those with a new set of wooden steps. And as we said, we went in and changed out all the plumbing. So we added new fixtures to all the vanities, to the showers, the kitchen, basically new plumbing everywhere. Also, this was a second bathroom that was added downstairs in the property. And where it was originally added, the evacuation was a little slow. So we opened the wall up and we put a vent in there to allow us for a little bit better tub evacuation. And accessing behind another wall, basically replaced all of that, replaced the mixer valve. You know, it's always the mixer valve that goes out. And that's us working. You know, this happened actually over December, so we lost quite a bit of light around 4 o'clock here. So this was us digging out and keeping on working till the job was done. Now, one thing I want to just throw in here is a caveat. You know, as we do all this work, the goal is to make our investment as solid as possible. So we want to make sure that the property we are working on, we are making as bulletproof as can be. The goal is to turn over a solid property to the buyer, not only so they don't have any problems going forward other than, general home maintenance, but if something should happen and we were have to foreclose on the property, we would know we're still dealing with good systems, updated electrical, plumbing, roof, air conditioning. All these things are investments that should be made with a shrewd look at longevity. So with that being said, let's continue. So here's the rundown. The acquisition for this is a 3-bed, 2-bath, and with closing, we were at $22,000. Roof and the heating and cooling came to a total of $6,900. Plumbing with the sewer line replacement and all fixtures inside the home, $7,200. The paint work and upgrading the plugs in the house, $2,300. And the fridge and stove, that came out to right at $1,500 with delivery and setup. So this little jewel right here, we are all in at $39,900. Now we sold this to a pipeline buyer for $85,000. We took an $8,000 down payment, and then we are originating the note on this home for $77,000 at a 9% interest rate. The payment comes to $822. Taxes and insurance is built into that payment at $169 a month. And the principal and interest comes to $653 a month. So that's a pretty good little spread right there. So this is our subject property. Got the bathrooms put back together. All the plumbing is updated and upgraded, and everything is in functioning working order. We were fortunate enough that this already had the breaker box instead of the fuses, but nothing was labeled. So we went in and tracked everything down as we were doing our upgrades and made sure that the homeowners would know which breakers worked, which parts of the property. Some of our new paint got in here, sharpened the room up. And this is a shot of our kitchen. We were fortunate enough that the cabinets had already been replaced. One of the bedrooms here, this is, we've got our solid paint job in there, and also the carpeting that was installed. The family did not reside in the property very long after the carpet was installed, so we were able to clean and maintain this carpeting. It's about 6 months old, so that we got very, very lucky there. And that's our new roof. And what a beauty. It is crazy how quick those things go on these days. So we know from top to bottom, plumbing, electrical, everything going in and out, we are good to go. So this, to me, is not quite a grand slam, but it's better than a solid base hit. We structured the payments to be less than a comparable rent payment. The buyer is happy because they will own the home and have the ability to have some pride in home ownership. The term was modeled out for 24 years to keep their payment lower than the rents and to keep us in a strong interest yield position. Now, as we stated earlier, this is not like a CD at the bank where you're getting your investment back at the end of the term and we've made 1% or less. We are making yield-based returns where we are reclaiming principal along the way, as well as making interest. So at a 24-year term, and for our $39,900 initial investment, we're pulling in $7,836 principal and interest annually, which lands us at a 22% yield per annum. Now, we find these opportunities fairly often and would love to help strengthen our neighborhoods and our returns at the same time. Some of our opportunities do yield a lower return and tend to, in those cases, have a better position in the community, which drives acquisition prices up. And generally that's predicated on the school system. Now, we do not like to touch an origination deal unless we believe we can pencil between a 15 and 20+% annual yield. So that is our goal every time. So in summary, we took an initial investment of $39,900 all in, originated a note for $77,000 at a 9% interest rate. This created a 22% annual yield with an annual P&I of $7,836. And basically, this note origination from less than $40,000 will yield over $188,000 over the life of the loan. Now, to me, that's pretty beautiful. Now, one of the strong points of these types of deals is the ability to turn around and do this again and again. As time goes on, stacking up a strong yield. The origination of $39,900 will yield over $188,000 over the life of the mortgage. How is that for compounding interest? So we would love the opportunity to speak to each of you one-on-one and answer any questions you may have that we may not have time to go over today. So please feel free to reach out to our website at www.bohemianpropertiesllc.com and schedule your free one-on-one Zoom so we can get face-to-face and see if we'd be a good fit for each other. We know these relationships are a long-term union, and we want to make sure we are all a good fit. When we do these one-on-ones, it's quite often not pitchy, not salesy, not very deep into strategy and structure. Quite often, it's to get to meet each other, to get to know what your personal goals are. Our intent is to generate legacy not only for ourselves, but also be tied to the legacy of the people we work with at Bohemian Properties. So we want to hear what your needs are, whether it be establishing income for a child with a disability for the future, or whether it be growing whatever philanthropic ideal you have. When we make these kinds of investments, we know it's for the long haul. So quite often that first one-on-one gives us the opportunity to see if you would like to do business with us and if we would like to do business with you. And I think with that being said, I really look forward to speaking with all of you soon. Please visit our website and we have a schedule your one-on-one Zoom. It's right there at the top of the header, and we would love to speak to each of you.
Great. Well, thank you, John. I appreciate the presentation and the rundown of that deal. That was, you know, as I mentioned before at the beginning of the presentation, I've had a lot of exposure to or recently, not in the long run, but recently with this idea of combining the acquisition of the property with a note. So I'm curious as to how you guys kind of arrived at that as one of the tools that you use in your tool bag.
Well, as a person that was involved in properties before I full-fledged jumped into real estate as a full-time lifestyle and investment, my goal had always been to be the apartment owner or be the property owner and be the manager. As a child growing up, I realized that the rent was the first bill my mother paid, and I wanted to be the guy that got paid at the first of every month. And after being a landlord and dealing with tenants and the damage that they will often do because they have no skin in the game, I decided pretty quick that it was more of a job and less of a legacy play, even with management, between what you pay for apartment management or property management in the single home space. Between that, repairs and maintenance, taxes and insurance, and all the other financial liabilities you have, you really are making about 50 cents on the dollar quite often of your rent rate. So, you know, if you're penciling under an ideal circumstance with low maintenance issues, you're going to wind up with a 10% return. Well, at the end of the day, after you pay all the haulage and drainage, you wind up with about a 4 to 6% return, and you still had to mitigate all the maintenance and the headaches. So I figured, shoot, make an ironclad property, sell it and originate the terms, be the bank, be the financial institution that's tied to this deal for 20, 25, 30 years. So if you flip a house, you work for 6 months, then you eat pretty well off that deal. If you take a house back to a respectable standard and you sell that home, you eat a higher return over a much longer period of time. So it just seemed like a common sense play to me to be the person that was being the bank.
Got it. And I'm gonna fold in some of the questions that are coming up on the question box here, and I'll remind everybody, if you have questions about that specific case study, or about how this strategy works, kind of overarching in terms of combining the acquisition of a property and then also doing the financing on it, please type those in. We're happy to answer those. So one of the questions that's in the question box, John, is asked about the loan length. And you had mentioned in your presentation that you crafted in the case study that you gave us, that the loan length had a lot to do with what the monthly payment would be. So is that always the way you approach it, or how do you guys approach the setting the term of the loan?
It really depends on the joint venture partnership we're associated with. Our play is longer is better. William and I are both in our 40s, and we know if we pencil a deal now and it takes 25, 30 years, that's not really a problem. And also after we're gone, we would like our heirs to have cash flow on that. Our partner on this specific deal is a gentleman in his 30s out of California, and he was fine going a full 30 years. The buyers were looking for 20 years, but could not do 20 years at that interest rate and get the payment they wanted. The payment would have been a little higher. So our goal is to try to originate with a mortgage payment that is close to the rent that they are used to paying, because A, it already fits into their budget, and B, it gives us a better yield position. So if we have to make that payment a little lower, you saw from the spread earlier with the T&I and P&I spread, most of the income does go to us as the investors. The taxes here in Alabama are not that harsh on the home buyers. So we're still in a good position to generate a good 75, 80% yield off of a total PI-TI payment. So we structured that deal for 24 years so that we could hit a payment under $850.
Got it. And John, you and I were talking about this before we turned on the presentation, the live presentation, and so we were talking about how an IRA investor might, become a joint venturer, and it sounded to me like, and so I'm going to run this past you and see if that fits in what you're talking about, that really talking to them about how old they are, when they're going to be taking distributions and things like that would be part of the initial kind of conversation about what their goals are. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. That is definitely correct. We like to know what goals are in the household, and also what goals may be for the younger generations that we may be working with in the future. So if a person wants to make, as let's say they're getting closer to distribution age and they would like to sock as much money in there as possible, well, then the buyer that needs the 24 or 25-year term may not be the right buyer. So we would continue pursuing pipeline buyers until we had the person that would fit into that scenario.
Right. Well, one of the things that interested me about this again, I keep restating it because it's such a simple idea, but not everybody does it. But it's the idea of acquiring the property and as you say, kind of making it bulletproof or making it a viable long-term asset, and then adding the loan onto the entire equation. It really speaks to the idea of what we talk about for IRA investors a lot, in terms of thinking about what your exit is, what the exit strategy is. And for lots of people who have IRAs, whether it's a traditional or a Roth, what they're looking for as they move closer to usually 59.5, which where the threshold for the early distribution penalty goes away. And sometimes it's later. Sometimes the person's retirement strategy is until 65, 70, and even later. But at some point, usually they're thinking about, how do I take the cash or the value that I have in my IRA and turn it into cash flow? And so one of the things that I've seen people do from even whether it's the required minimum distributions after 72 now, or whether it's just voluntary distributions after 60, I've definitely seen people kind of look at being the lender as a way to produce a consistent rate of return on those funds, because what they'll do is they'll have that principal and interest payment or the loan payment come into their IRA, and then they'll put themselves on a distribution schedule. Often it's quarterly or something like that, but they've created that income personally through their IRA because they do it through a distribution strategy. And so I appreciate the fact that you guys are also working with somebody who is looking at or thinking about the person's timetable, because I think that that's so important when it comes to IRA investing.
Oh, definitely. It's one of the most important Lego pieces of the foundations of the deals that we try to structure. We really want to know that not only are we doing a deal that makes money that we would consider an acceptable return, but also we would like to know that we are meeting the needs of the investors we're working with. Because if you go to any kind of facility and you have a bad experience, yeah, you're going to tell people. But if you go and you have a fantastic experience, an experience that's tailored to you, you're going to tell everybody about it, and you're going to be happy to talk about it because it's paying you what you need from a dividend standpoint, or the steak was just right, or the barista got the latte just the way you wanted it. Whatever it is, those little details. And that's why we really try to keep our family small. That's why we do our one-on-ones, so that as we meet with people, we feel there's a good synergy there and we can work together for a long time. It's a win-win all around. And we couldn't be any happier with the decisions that we made.
So I'm going to go back to the questions here. So I'll give them to you as we go. But here we go from question box. So what kind of volume does the company create on average? Specifically, how many deals might you source in an average year?
Depending on the volume of the investors that we're working with, right now we haven't been doing a lot of properties. Properties have been pretty expensive in the market. So this deal that we just put together, it took us a while to source one at that kind of return, and the goal of the investor was wanting to generate over a 20% yield per annum. So when we found it, we jumped on the property. We are working on some new strategies for onboarding properties. There are a lot of properties in the areas that are available, but through the land bank. So it takes a lot of red tape to get with the state to get these properties, and we are trying to line up a better system for that, so that some of these properties where the families that were involved are no longer alive, the state generally holds these properties for the back taxes. So we're basically in talks right now to try to figure out how to expedite getting those properties out and of the state ownership and bring them back online. So realistically, the last year, I would say we originated just a few deals, and we were trying to get the higher than 20% yields for all those because we had cash in those as well. We are seeing more deals come our way that are suitable for 15 to 20% yields that haven't really exceeded the 20 plus, but have still been acceptable investments. And also we're trying to, if we can, trying to source more brick homes, because in my opinion, that just takes a lot of the exterior maintenance out for not just the homeowner, but also for us if we maintain the note for the whole time, or if we wind up taking the property back at some point and originating new terms or liquidating. So I conceivably feel that we could probably do up to about 15 to 20 of these a year, depending on our network and our needs.
And so would it be safe to say that that it is something that would be, in terms of when somebody has money available, it may not be instantaneous, but it may be. It's just kind of has a little bit to do with what the environment is like?
Yes, that is correct. We like to have the conversations and understand the needs, so we can kind of, as we look at properties, we know what our different partners or what our strategy requires. So just because we look at a deal and it may not pencil for us or pencil for, say, one of the funds that we work with, it may pencil for an individual investor that's looking for a legacy play. And then if that's the case, when we're done with our underwriting, we will reach out to that investor and we will say, we talked back, 6 weeks ago, 8 weeks ago, and this was a strategy that we were interested in. We think we found a deal. We'd like to discuss it with you. And then we see how that conversation goes. And if things go well, we pursue acquisition. And we try to move pretty quickly with those, because with the market as hot as it is right now, we are underwriting deals all the time. Deals come across our desk. I probably get about 25, 30 houses any given day. And as we said earlier, especially with a lot of these wholesalers all over the country doing digital wholesaling, they don't know the areas. And Birmingham and Alabama in general, central Alabama, is very street by street in a lot of cases. So just because a property sold for $180,000 3 blocks away doesn't mean your property is worth the same $100,000+. William, he and his wife bought a house last year, and the home they sold, the pocket it was in, had some really good redevelopment going on there, and properties were yielding between $250,000 to $400,000 a property. But 3 blocks away, there were similar size homes as far as build and square footage, but with the pocket of crime, those homes are still worth $30,000. So you have to be very careful when you vet. I never trust anybody's underwriting. I look at every deal as if it's a new lead that I got sent from a seller and they want to sell, and I do all the underwriting on the property so that we know our data is right for not only comparable sales, but also crime statistics, because they are so vital to what we do. You have to kiss a lot of frogs before you find your prince or princess. And we spend most of our days with frogs on our lips.
So I have 2 questions here about buyer refinancing. So there's the idea being that if the interest rate is 9%, do you worry that somebody will refinance at a lower rate? And if you are worried about that, do you have a prepayment penalty? How do you handle the idea that somebody would want to change the terms kind of midstream there?
We do put a prepayment penalty in, and generally we negotiate that with the investor that we are working with to see what they are amicable to. Some people are more aggressive and want the prepayment penalty to be pretty punitive, and some people just want to make a little extra for having to get out of the deal and get into the next deal. So we kind of look at it as an opportunity with most of our note brokering clients, that if somebody does pay out, whether we originated the note or we help source the note, that, if we get our money out, since we are working with amortized loans, we did have more interest on the front end. So let's say we originate a note and the people pay on it for 7 years, and then they refi out, we're going to get most of our capital back at that point, actually, plus all of our profits, because within the first 7 or 8 years they've paid down less than 5 or 6% of the mortgage.
Right.
So, and let's say we have somebody that's trucking right along, and then all of a sudden they go non-performing for whatever, death in the family, illness in the family, somebody, let's say a job closes down, or they're educating to get a transition. A lot of times we take our positions right next to the buyer and have the ability to open that dialogue and figure out if this is something we can get reperforming through a restructure, whether it be, right now with the forbearance, we're seeing a lot of this in the market. People are giving individuals the opportunity to maintain their loans. They're basically restructuring what the payments will look like. Sometimes getting either another lump sum in the middle to kind of re-originate an equity position, a trust position, or sometimes adding a little bit of juice to the interest as the penalty, and it affects the buyer a little bit in the payment every month, but not enough to where they would be in a negative position and not be happy with it because they've basically been forgiven for whatever life event they had. And, 0.25% interest over the next 20 years could be a great yield for us. So if somebody does refinance out of a deal, a lot of times we look at that as an opportunity just to go find the next deal.
Mm-hmm. So there's a question here about how can somebody create diversification financing single family residences? And so this may be asking a little bit about your origination experience, because it sounds like you've done more than certainly more than one kind of note. Is there a kind of a I don't know, a slate of different kind of loans that would be able to create some kind of staggered returns or diversification, that kind of thing?
You do sometimes see people put balloon payments on loans. I tend to not be a fan of that because it forces a person at a certain point to either have to refi or to default. And some people do that. So in 5 to 8, 10 years, just at certain trigger points, they have a large cash influx. I see the desire in that. If your strategy is in 10 years, I would like to be out of this, or I want at least to get X amount back to maintain my position in it. And some buyers would be tickled at the opportunity to have 10 years in a property and then know they have a problem they can deal with later. We don't advise against it. We just do advise it has a little bit less of a success rate. But certainly it does work. I have seen people structure some stuff with some pretty crazy balloon payments in Florida, most definitely because of the value of the properties. And at that time, make basically what would be considered like a cash out, getting say a $50,000 payment at one time, and then there'd be 5 or 10 years left on the loan. And with the appreciation the property is realized in that area, it was still worth it to the homeowner to figure out how to come up with that $50,000. So really it's predicated on the creativity that we can execute between ourselves, our partners in the deal, and the buyer, figuring out what they would be comfortable with. We like to set them up for success, but also we like to make sure we get enough, juice out of the berry. So if it's not a deal for us from the investor standpoint, we won't extend it as a deal to the buyer because it's not worth our efforts.
Got it. So the next question is, do investors invest in specific deals or do they become part of a partnership with Bohemian Properties?
Investors invest in specific deals. There are different ways we do this. Sometimes we deploy our capital as well and joint venture on the property and take a larger share. Also, we originate and manage for a percentage of a deal. So let's say we had a property and it yielded a pretty significant return, and we could look at maybe eating 15% of that deal for origination and managing it over the life of it. It all starts with the one-on-one. We just kind of figure out where everybody's comforts are. Some people won't want to be a joint venture partner with anybody, and they want to run it and make the decisions, and they just want to have a manager that runs the ball. We're fine in that position. If we have capital to deploy, because we do a little bit of lending with some partners outside of just the space. As far as originating, we also lend to a couple of contractors in the area for flips. So if our money's tied up there, then we won't deploy with the potential partner. Let's see, I also want to say that I think the lowest The lowest return we've given thus far or worked with anybody on these is right at 15%, and that was after our management cut. So it worked out pretty well. We just kind of have to look at all the ins and outs and the preferences of the different investors. Depends on how much control they want. You know, some people want a text every time anything happens, want a phone call every time anything happens. And some people just want to know that the money hits the bank when it's supposed to hit the bank. And if it's not going to hit the bank, can I get some heads up before?
Right. Next question is, are you in other markets besides Alabama at the moment? Or, and I guess feel free to also say if there's other ones you're looking at.
Right now, we are just in the Alabama market. We are looking in some other markets, but nowhere that we are comfortable enough yet to expand our reach. And most of that is predicated on the contractor availability. Right now, with the market being as hot as it is really hard to just walk into a market and get good contractors at a rate that will work for what we're doing. If you're flipping at the top of the market and your goal is to make, you know, $15, $20, $25, $30,000 a property, and you can use 18% hard money and go pay full price for contractors because of the appreciation in your area, then do that. But for what we're doing, it's all about relationships. We have looked in the Mississippi market just because of some of the developments there in the South. There's a lot of jobs going in. We like Vicksburg, but have not bought anything there and tried executing. There are also some pockets in Georgia that we like that are not Atlanta expensive yet, but they still have a lot of good housing stock. So we have the ability to source notes nationwide, and we do that. But as far as origination right now, we are just in our own backyard.
And so one of the questions is about, you know, management, and I want to just make a couple of specifications. So one is the strategy that we were talking about today, of course, is mitigating the idea of having to be a property manager.
Exactly.
But then do you guys do the loan management? Is that part of what you guys do?
So we use a third-party processor to handle all of the escrow and to make sure all the tax information at the end of the year is drawn up accordingly for everybody. And that has actually made things a little bit easier for us because it offers us the opportunity on the deals that we help originate. But let's say an investor wants to hold the property solely in their name or in a trust, say for heirs. We can handle the management disbursement through the servicing company. And at the end of the year, all of the cash flow, taxation, and paid outs are processed. So when you get your reports, you just email those over to your tax preparer and you're done. No headaches. The main part of the management that we handle is sourcing the property, the scope of work for the rehabs. And as you saw with the last one we did, you know, whenever you have to get an excavator into play, you're into a lot more than just, you know, paint and curtains and new bathroom fixtures. So we mitigate all that. We handle all the scheduling. We handle all of the making sure that everybody's getting paid and getting paid on time, making sure that we're dealing with the city as the cities need to be dealt with. Also sourcing the buyer and managing anything that may happen or may not happen over time. If somebody buys the house and just lives in it for, 20, 30 years and makes their payments out until they own it, well, that's great. Then we had an easy time on that one, and we did all of our headache work in the first few months. But let's say it's somebody that has a life event and they have to be gotten out of the property. We handle the processing of the foreclosure, the trash out of the property, bringing the property back online, and originating a new buyer. Or let's say the investor at that point says, you know what, I think there's some appreciation in the market, and I think right now we can just sell that. Well, we would handle that as well. So kind of as the headaches come at us, we play a human shield between ourselves and the investor to keep them from having to deal with that headache.
So it sounds like it's it's possible to say that the investment strategy overall, it could be implemented in any market. But one of the things that I think I'm hearing is that you guys tend to position yourselves, as you say, in between the investor and almost all of the activity and the adjustments that need to be made to set the whole process from acquiring the property to the origination of the note. So, you know, it may be possible that exact same strategy works in a different marketplace, or would work in any marketplace. It would be a matter of assembling a team that would handle each of those components, whether it's the investor themselves or individual kind of partners or vendors. Is that accurate?
Oh yes, totally. And we intend on, as we get better at this and we dial in our systems and are comfortable, that we can basically land in another market and hit the ignition switch, then we definitely plan on doing that. I would love to be in more some areas a little further north, and also some areas a little further west. You know, 6'5", 300-pound big Alabama guy. I don't like all this heat we have, so definitely looking to get to some bigger areas. But also, it depends on the investor's needs and wants. We have one person that we have been trying to help find a property to meet their need, and they want to buy a performing note, and they want to buy on the beach in one of 3 cities, and it's kind of like, you know, diving into the ocean amongst a ton of tidal activity is to find a pearl. It may be out there, but how are you going to see it? It's that 1 in 100 million chances. So people like that, you know, we're still looking at everything in the areas that they desire, but we've not found what they want yet at the yield they want. But if somebody's like, look, I don't care where it is geographically, this is the return I want, and I just want it backed by real estate, then we would definitely pursue to grow in other markets. Some people love Alabama to invest in because of their experiences, a rental landlord, but they're tired of the headaches. And some people would never hold in Alabama just because of, you know, their pre-existing prejudices or understanding. And, you know, one thing I realize is perception is reality. People don't know what they don't know, but they're pretty sure about what they think they know. So, you know, growing up in this country in the 70s and 80s, you know, Beirut used to be a pretty rough area. Every time you saw it on the news, there was some reporter ducking and dodging bullets. But they have had a lot of time to get past those woes and make the area a little nicer. And I was speaking to an international investor the other day, and I made a comment about Beirut, kind of making it seem like in the west side of Birmingham, where you need to take a piece in a flak jacket. And he's like, oh, you've been to Beirut? It's lovely. And I was thinking, man, I have egg on my face, because my reference is dated, but it's still my reality. So a lot of times when people think, oh, Birmingham, Alabama, I don't know about that. Well, let me tell you what we've got going on good. Let me be honest with you about what we've got going on that's not so great, but where we've had improvements. And if it's right for you, it's right for you. And if it's not, it's not. But the one consistent reality with real estate is everybody needs a place to live. Lumber is 3 times more right now than it was a year and a half ago. People are building, but not at the rate at which inventory is needed. I know in this market right now, we have about 1.5 months worth of inventory on the MLS, and that's it. And people can't get them quick enough to bring them online. So I think we're definitely in a good position, even at a penalty box buyer kind of interest rate. I still feel there's a lot of people who are really looking for what we can provide.
Yeah. Well, John, we've gone over time a little bit, and I want to, so I'm going to go ahead and wrap it up. The contact information for both of us is on the screen, so please do feel free to reach out if you have questions that for follow-up, or if you don't feel like your question got answered completely. Please feel free to contact us. We're happy to answer those questions. Hey, John, thanks a lot for spending some time with me today and sharing your experience with this investment strategy. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Clay.
All right. And thanks everybody who joined us for spending some time. Hopefully this has given you some ideas about how you can deploy your IRA or even your personal investment dollars. Again, you know, all the information today was for educational purposes only, and hopefully it was helpful. We do have a continuing slate of educational webinars, so please check out our website under events, and you'll see what ones we have coming up, and hopefully we will be able to, you know, keep bolstering your educational experience when it comes to your investing. So thanks for joining us today, and everybody, I hope has a great and safe day, and we'll see you on the next one. Bye now.